I want to bring up a fascinating report that your Center of the American Experiment released here entitled Shattered Green Dreams, the Environmental Costs of Wind and Solar, which offers, I thought, a fairly comprehensive analysis of the hidden trade-offs involved in large-scale renewable energy deployment in the U.S. Now, we're having our own debate here in Australia about this same issue. Tell us about what you found and how this is all working in the U.S., because I think here in Australia, we might be curious to see how this is all going.
Yeah, James, one of the great myths is that wind and solar energy, plus, of course, these hypothetical batteries that don't actually exist, are somehow good for the environment. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. And this report by Sarah Montalbano of my organization lays this out in great detail. The fundamental problem is that wind and solar are incredibly low intensity energy sources. They kind of work once in a while, intermittently, not most of the time. But even when they work, they produce ridiculously small amounts of electricity. And what that means is you have to devote enormous quantities of raw materials to constructing these thousands and thousands and thousands of wind turbines and millions of solar panels, and to actually carry out this alleged green energy transition that leftists like to talk about would require the biggest mining, manufacturing, transportation, and construction project since the Industrial Revolution. And of course, all of those things produce a great deal of carbon dioxide. So we could talk more about it. You know, one issue is land use, because these forms of energy are so kind of lame. They take up an enormous amount of land. And so one fact that's in this report is that if we were to try to supply America's electricity, not all energy, but electricity requirements with wind turbines, it would take an area twice the size of the state of California to do that. And obviously, James, that is not going to happen.
Yeah, no, look, it's a fascinating report, and I'm going to send a copy of that to our Prime Minister just as soon as I get off the air here. But there was another story today that I found fascinating here, John, actually kind of hilarious almost. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced a new facility, $450 million she wants to spend on it in Florida, and they're calling it Alligator Alcatraz. It'll be a detention center in Florida's Everglades to collectively house as many as 5,000 detainees. John, tell us about this idea. The left has just freaked out about the idea of these detainees being surrounded by crocodiles, or rather alligators. Tell me, is this a good idea? Is it going to work, or is it the proverbial croc?
James, here's what's going on. First of all, Alligator Alcatraz, I absolutely love it. This is this remote area, this swampy area at the southern end of Florida. And yes, if someone were to try to escape from this detention center, it's full of alligators. It's also full of pythons, these huge 20-foot long snakes that crush you to death and then eat you. I mean, it's really awful. But what's it all about? It is all about self-deportation. Joe Biden allowed 10 to 15 million illegal aliens into the U.S., many of them criminals, and that's what we're talking about here. There's no practical way to get that many people onto buses and ship them down to Mexico. I mean, the logistics are impossible. But what needs to happen is that these people need to see the handwriting on the wall and self-deport, go back home the way they came. And James, that's happening. Just between January and May, there are now almost exactly 1 million fewer foreign-born people in the United States than they were at the end of last year. And so this plan is working, and the idea is that the criminal illegal aliens hear about Alligator Alcatraz, and they say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going back to Guatemala or, wherever.
John Hinderaker, thank you so much for joining me.